So, Hungary. Everyone's talking about it, right? Those elections, Orban's whole New World Order thing, it's a lot.
Yeah, Hungary's always good for a headliner, too.
Right. So we're diving into all that today, getting some expert insights from Peter Tolgyessi.
Oh, good. Tolgyessi, he's,
He hasn't held back.
let's just say, you're in for a ride.
Exactly. We're looking at his recent interview on Partizan, by the way, if you want to check it out. But basically, he starts off with this really interesting point. He says there were 2 winners in Hungary's election.
2. Okay, I'm listening.
Right, because obviously Orban won. But Tolgyessi says, look at the opposition. Look at how much ground they gained, especially with Mark Zay coming out of nowhere. It's like
the whole political scene just got a shake-up.
exactly. It's way more volatile than people realize.
Right. Which is interesting because usually you hear about Orban and it's all about the propaganda.
Total control, right?
Yeah, like he's got everyone hypnotized.
But Tolgyessi's saying, hold on. Propaganda's part of it, sure. But Hungary's economy,
Not exactly booming.
and even some of the people who used to be in Orban's corner,
Starting to have second thoughts.
they're like, wait a minute, is this really working? So it's more complex than just saying, oh, it's all fake news.
Way more complex. And then he gets into this whole other thing, workers' freedom paradox, he calls it.
Yeah, this one's wild. So he's saying, okay, politically, Orban's tightened his grip on everything,
Yeah.
but for everyday people, especially outside of Budapest,
They're feeling more free.
more free.
How does that work?
That's the paradox,
Yeah.
right? Tolgyessi says it's because the job market's so tight right now.
So people have options. They're not as dependent.
Exactly. They've got some breathing room.
Yeah.
They're less worried about, towing the line, because if they lose their job,
There's another one right around the corner.
so it's almost like by accident, Orban's created this situation where,
People are less afraid.
right, and that can be dangerous for a leader like him, someone who depends on.
People needing him on that strongman image.
And speaking of strongman image, we got to talk about Orban on the world stage lately. This whole New World Order business. He's jetting off to Ukraine, Russia, China, even had that meeting with Trump. It's like he's
Playing a whole different game.
right. While everyone else is still stuck on the basic level.
Hmm.
What's the strategy there with all this international stuff? Is it working?
Well, here's the thing. Tolgyessi calls it a gamble. A big one.
Like high risk, high reward.
Or high risk, total bust. Because what he's banking on is this, that the way things are set up now, the whole global order.
It's all going to fall apart.
And he's positioning himself to be a leader in whatever comes next.
Wow. Okay, so big picture thinking. But is it realistic?
That's the question, isn't it? And a lot of it hinges on China, from what Tolgyessi's saying.
China.
Yeah. Orban's been cozying up to Beijing big time. Investments, alliances, you name it. But what if Trump, supposedly his buddy,
turns against China? Which, let's face it, isn't exactly out of character.
suddenly Orban's stuck, his eastern opening could turn into a dead end real fast.
It's a serious gamble. And speaking of gambles, we got to talk about Peter Mark Zay. I mean, this guy.
Came out of nowhere.
Right. Challenging Orban head on. What does Tolgyessi make of this Mark Zay phenomenon? What's his deal?
Well, he says Mark Zay's got this instinct. He knows what people want. He knows how to play to those desires, even if
he's not being totally realistic.
Exactly. And that's what worries some people, Tolgyessi included, because, yeah, those promises sound good, but...
Can he actually deliver?
And more importantly, should he?
What do you mean?
Well, Tolgyessi points out that a lot of what Mark Zay is doing, it's familiar.
Familiar how?
It's like Orban late.
Hold on. Orban late. You're saying he's basically a toned-down version of the guy he's running against?
In some ways, yeah. The rhetoric, the appeals to national pride, the whole greater Hungary talk, Tolgyessi saying, look deeper, and you see a lot of the same buttons being pushed.
So is he the solution, or is he just another version of the same problem?
That is the million-dollar question.
It's almost like he's figured out the formula, but...
Maybe not the whole recipe.
Right. Like, he can get elected? Maybe. But then what? Can he actually lead?
And can he lead in a way that's, different? Because what Tolgyessi's getting at is this isn't just about Orban anymore. It's about what Hungary wants to be.
Okay, so bigger picture.
Yeah.
But what about the rest of the opposition? They're stuck in this weird spot, right?
Total catch-22. On the one hand, they need Mark Zay.
He's got the energy.
Right. He's got people excited, which they haven't been able to do for a long time. But
There's always a but.
But they see how he's doing it, and it makes them nervous.
Because it's too much like Orban.
Too much like what they're trying to get away from. Like, are they really going to beat Orban by becoming Orban?
It's a tough sell.
Tolgyessi brings up Girksani, actually.
Girksani. He's still around.
Guy's like a political cockroach. You can't get rid of him.
Well, he's been prime minister before, so.
Right. He knows how the game is played. And Tolgyessi says, Girksani, he sees the problem with Mark Zay.
This Orban light thing.
Yeah. He gets that just swapping out one strongman for another. That's not the solution.
It's just delaying the inevitable, maybe.
Exactly. And this is where Tolgyessi gets really interesting. He says, look at the left in Hungary. Look at what they're talking about.
What are they talking about?
Identity politics.
Yeah.
Abstract theories. Stuff that's totally irrelevant to like 90% of people.
So they've lost touch with
reality. With what people actually care about.
Jobs, the economy, that kind of thing.
And meanwhile, Orban's over here offering simple solutions. Maybe they're not good solutions, but...
At least he's speaking their language.
Which, according to Tolgyessi, is a huge problem. He says, if you want to beat populism, you gotta offer a real alternative. Not just the same old stuff with a different face on it.
So, new ideas, but also...
ideas that actually connect with people, that address their needs, their concerns.
Okay, so that's the opposition. What about the man himself, Orban? Does Tolgyessi think he's going anywhere anytime soon?
He admits Orban's good at this. Like, love him or hate him.
The guy's a survivor.
Totally. But even the best make mistakes. And Tolgyessi says Orban's been making some big ones lately.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
All this international stuff, the New World Order thing. Tolgyessi thinks it's a distraction.
From
the fact that things at home, not so great. Like, sure, Orban's jet-selling around, meeting world leaders.
looking important.
But for everyday Hungarians.
Not much to show for it.
Exactly. And meanwhile, the problems are piling up. Tolgyessi makes it sound like, remember that old saying, rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic?
Yeah, I get it. But why? Why is Orban doing this if it's so risky?
Because he's backed into a corner. That's Tolgyessi's take. He's alienated a lot of his old allies, and now he's relying on China, on Russia.
Which, as we discussed, could blow up in his face.
Totally. So he's putting on a brave face, talking about a new world order.
But really, he's just trying to hold on.
That's the theory. And the thing is, when you're that desperate to win, sometimes you end up losing everything.
It's a high-stakes game, for sure. And for Hungary, the stakes couldn't be higher. But even if we put aside this whole New World Order idea for a second, we still have to deal with what's happening inside Hungary, right? We talked about the workers' freedom paradox earlier, how Orban's basically given people more economic freedom without really meaning to. What's the long game there? What does Tolgyessi see happening?
Well, he actually thinks this could be the thing that trips Orban up in the end.
Really?
He's creating a population that's used to having options, used to being independent.
Okay.
Especially outside Budapest, you know? They're not relying on the government as much.
And once people get a taste of that freedom...
hard to go back, right?
Exactly. So it backfires. He tightens his grip, but people are already slipping out from under it.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting because Tolgyessi says Orban's whole system, it depends on people being afraid.
Afraid of what?
Migrants, the EU, liberals, you name it. Orban's always got some boogeyman, right?
To rally everyone again.
Right. It's us versus them. But if people aren't scared anymore...
the whole thing falls apart.
And that's what Tolgyessi thinks is starting to happen. The fear's wearing off. People are feeling more secure.
So, Orban ends up creating the very thing that undermines him. A population that doesn't need a strong man anymore.
It's kind of poetic when you think about it.
It really is. Okay, so we've got this internal pressure building. We've got Orban playing these risky games on the world stage.
And the million-dollar question is, what happens next?
Can the opposition actually take advantage of all this? Can they beat Orban at his own game?
Tolgyessi seems to think they can, but...
there's always a but, isn't there?
There's always a but. He says they have to understand why people are drawn to Orban in the first place.
And it's not just about the economy, right? It's deeper than that.
Way deeper. Tolgyessi says it's cultural anxiety. People are scared of globalization, of losing their traditions, of being left behind as the world changes.
Which, let's be honest, is something happening everywhere, not just Hungary.
Totally. It's that feeling of, like, the rug's been pulled out from under you, and when that happens, people want something familiar, something to hold on to.
Even if it's not real or not healthy.
Right. And Tolgyessi says the opposition, they can tap into that, but not by being like Orban, not by exploiting those fears.
So what do?
They need to offer a different kind of future, one that's both secure and open, one that respects Hungarian identity, but also embraces progress.
Not us versus them, but
It's moving forward.
it's a tough needle to thread for sure. But that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Changing the way people see the world, not just changing the policies.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Tolgyessi's final point, really. He says this whole thing, it's not just Orban versus the opposition. It's two visions of the world clashing.
Okay, I like where this is going. Go on.
On the one hand, you've got Orban's New World Order, walls up, looking to the past, very nationalistic. And on the other hand,
Different kind of Hungary.
a Hungary that's open to the world,
Yeah.
democratic, inclusive. And Tolgyessi leaves us with this question, really. Which vision wins? Which future does Hungary choose?
It's a question we all have to ask ourselves, I think. Not just about Hungary, but about the world we want to live in. So that's our deep dive into Hungarian politics. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's also incredibly important. And we hope, by understanding the forces at play, you're better equipped to make sense of it all.
Because the choices being made right now, they have real consequences. For Hungary and for the rest of us, too.
So keep asking those tough questions, keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.